Welcome back, everybody, to the Octagon Lab. It is the night before UFC 330, and I wanted to give you guys my absolute final prediction for Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry. Now that we've seen the weigh-ins, we've seen the face-offs, we've gone through media day, we have all the information on the table, and there's a ton on the line when it comes to this matchup. Islam Makhachev also, obviously, about to break Anderson Silva's record for the longest win streak inside the UFC. Ian Machado Garry on the precipice of achieving his dream of becoming world champion. And on top of that, this is one of the most skilled matchups we've seen in the UFC in a very long time. Islam Makhachev, probably the best grappler on the entire roster. Ian Machado Garry, one of the best strikers on the entire roster, one of the smartest fighters on the entire roster. So this is going to be a really fun fight. Without further ado, I'm going to break down how I see this playing out, and I'm also going to give you guys my favorite bet for this matchup as well. So let's get right into the keys to victory for Islam Makhachev and Ian Garry in this one. And honestly, there is one key to victory that goes for both of these fighters, and that is to control the scoring and the minutes. Now, obviously, like I said, I always say there's three ways you can win a fight, right? You can win by knockout, submission, or decision. That's no secret. Everybody knows that. And when you kind of go break this matchup down, I definitely do not see a knockout happening here. Obviously, Islam Makhachev knocked out Volkanovski, blah, blah, blah. That was on short notice. Either way, Ian Garry, the taller, longer striker, is going to be really hard for Makhachev to catch Ian Garry with something clean. Even when Ian Garry gets hit in this matchup, I feel like it'll be him, going backwards, taking a lot off the shot. I don't think that Ian Garry is going to get dropped in this fight. I also think that, Ian Machado Garry, he's not really a crazy finisher. He plays the point game really well, and honestly, the smartest fighters do. So you can't hate him for it the same way you can't hate Islam Makhachev for just dominating someone on the ground and, winning a guaranteed decision. You can't hate that type of style. At the end of the day, this is an extremely elite matchup. So controlling the minutes and the scoring is going to be key. Now, obviously, both of these guys will do that in an extremely different way. One thing that I've said in a video before on this channel that, leads to Islam Makhachev's success in a lot of his fights is that Islam Makhachev is probably one of the best fighters, if not the best fighter on the planet when it comes to managing and controlling the fight. Now, what this means is that if you go look at Islam Makhachev's fights, right? Every opponent of Islam Makhachev's is fighting a fight from behind. You have to go and beat Islam Makhachev when he's already ahead. And that's going to be extremely hard. So the one thing I see is that Ian Garry cannot fall behind in this matchup if he wants to win. Islam Makhachev, with his grappling threat, with his control time, always finds a way to bank those early rounds. And that just creates a hell of a lot of problems for his opponent, because now his opponent feels like they need to go and find a finish, go do something. And in that process, they probably get choked out. That's kind of like what happens in a Makhachev fight. Or, Makhachev just continues to dominate the minutes and the opponent can't really do much about it. So Ian Garry here cannot give up control time. Control time is literally going to be the death of Ian Garry. I think we all kind of understand this, though. We all kind of know this. Now, I think that when it comes to this fight, it probably goes to a decision, in my opinion. Ian Garry is shown to be extremely high IQ. He always plays a fight in a way where, he's going to play it safe if he has to. But the thing is, he can't really even let himself get to that position. That being said, I don't see Ian Garry being a fighter who's like, fuck it. I'm stuck in this spot. Let me try and take a big risk. Nah, I don't think he's a big risk taker, honestly. So I think Ian Garry is someone maybe in a very later round if he's getting absolutely dominated. But I don't see this fight being that one-sided, which is why I think that there's no point in this fight where I think Ian Garry is going to be like, let me take a huge risk to potentially scramble back up, stick my neck out, get choked out, something like that. I don't think Ian Garry is going to put himself in that scenario. Now, Ian Garry, to win this fight, he's going to have to keep it on the feet to win minutes specifically. But every time this fight is on the feet, Ian Garry will win the minutes. Now, a lot of people are saying Islam Makhachev is an underrated striker, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, they're right, except there's certain things about these fighters that he's outstriking that are, great strikers like a Dustin Poirier, Alexander Volkanovski. Charles Oliveira is actually a pretty dangerous, deadly striker. Jack Della Maddalena, I don't think JDM's that sick. I have my own opinions on JDM, but for the video, sake, Jack Della Maddalena. People are like, Islam Makhachev outstruck all four of these opponents. Islam Makhachev is an elite striker. I agree, but the base of his striking is the threat of his takedown. So, you see someone like a Murad Dvalishvili, right? Murad Dvalishvili outstruck Sean O'Malley in their fight. Now, if you put Murad Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley in a fight with no grappling, you know what's going to happen, right? Murad's going to get his ass beat by Sean O'Malley. Obviously, in MMA, grappling's included. So, the threat of the takedown is huge. But then you go look at Peter Yan versus Varalashvili. Peter Yan in that second fight was just able to defend the takedowns. And once that takedown threat is gone, it becomes a bloodbath for the wrestler. And here's the thing, right? Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry. Can Ian Garry stop the takedown and stop the control time? Honestly, it's going to be interesting because Ian Garry on the feet is going to cause a lot of problems for Makhachev. I think those takedowns are going to look a little bit more desperate in this fight. So, like I said, the very big key to victory here is you got to win the minutes. You got to get the points. That is how this fight I see kind of going. So in that scenario, Islam Makhachev, who normally wins minutes by getting his grappling going in there, how is he going to kind of do that against Ian Garry? I really think it's going to be a tough problem for Islam Makhachev. Only because Ian Garry at range, like, look at these strikers Islam Makhachev is outstriking, right? Jack Della Maddalena, pocket boxer. He wants to be in close. Of course, he has some leg kicks, blah, blah. He has some kicks in general, but for the most part, it's his boxing. Dustin Poirier, it's his boxing. He pulls those shorts up and he comes right in range. Alexander Volkanovski, the only guy who's good at managing distance and range, and gave him a fuck ton of problems. This one that he won by knockout in the first round, this is literally off the couch, drinking beers, Volkanovski. You cannot put a lot of stock in this. Full cam Volkanovski, we saw how this went. And Volkanovski gave him a fuck ton of problems. And Volkanovski is shorter and, does not have a reach advantage. And that was giving him problems, which is why I think that Ian Garry actually posed a threat. Because Ian Garry, not only will he have great movement and footwork like Volkanovski and be able to manage distance as well as Volkanovski, but he will be longer. And when he is in range, Islam Makhachev is not. In the other side, Volkanovski had to pick his spots, and Volkanovski's just that fucking good. And I don't think that Ian Garry is a better fighter than Volkanovski overall, but in general, Ian Garry has a lot of the similar traits on the feet. Charles Oliveira, this guy is like a berserker. I'm the biggest Charles Oliveira fan on the planet. I'll tell you, he's just going to run at you. That's what he's going to do. So on the feet, this is a real problem for Islam Makhachev. And what does that do? If Islam Makhachev isn't posing as much of a threat on the feet, how will those takedowns look is kind of my question here, right? Now, of course, Islam Makhachev kind of brute force the grappling in this scenario, and no one's going to be surprised if he just kind of eats a shot or two, gets in there, locks his hands, and then goes for a body lock trip or something like that. Nobody's going to be surprised if he gets his game plan going like that. And honestly, if you think Makhachev wins, which majority of the market does, that's probably what it's going to look like. Now, on the Ian Garry side, if Ian Garry starts defending those takedowns, he's going to have to move a lot. Constant 25 minutes of movement, footwork, always be somewhere else by the time Islam gets there. And, that's going to be his kind of path. The only other part of this I would add is that the third way to win a fight, which is by submission. Now, like I said, I don't see any knockouts. Decision is kind of like how I prominently see this fight playing out. And I think that it's going to be, one of these guys winning on points because that's the key to victory. But Makhachev, of course, is live for submission. The only reason I say that, too, is because, Ian Garry, once again, I think he has, we all know this, the physical traits, the length and all that stuff. I think it's great for his stand-up. I also think it'll be good for, when he builds posts, when he sprawls and stuff like that. But I don't think it'll be great for, obviously, his neck being out there, limbs being out there. So a submission, I think, is live, of course. Gary's going to have to stay super safe, but I think Gary's a really high IQ fighter, training in the jiu-jitsu quite a bit. So, I don't know if the submission is actually as live as a lot of people say. Just because he has a long neck, doesn't mean that he's going to get submitted. And, someone in this comments or someone seeing this video might be like, oh, but Islam Makhachev submitted Charles Oliveira, a way better jiu-jitsu practitioner than Ian Machado Garry. Yes, but, context in the fight, right? It's all about context. Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev, they just roll around. I actually don't think Charles Oliveira gets submitted. Charles Oliveira got hurt on the feet and, then they go to the ground. And obviously, this is a compromised Charles Oliveira that Islam Makhachev is submitting. Now, you kind of go look at this. Ian Machado Garry, these two back-to-back fights against Prates and Bilal, they're solid. Like, Prates, he danced on Prates for 24 minutes. Extremely insane. Obviously, that last minute of that fifth round, it looked a little bit shaky, but Prates has a death touch. We all know that. And, Ian Machado Garry, his footwork was peak in this fight. Now, against Bilal Muhammad, Bilal Muhammad is that pressure wrestling style, and he did a great job against Bilal Muhammad. So, all of this to say, I think that out of the three paths, I'm kind of ruling out knockout. I don't see a knockout happening. I don't think Makhachev can, land something slick in range. I think Ian Garry is extremely elite on the feet, one of the most elite strikers on the roster. I think the key to victory here is how to win points, how to win this fight by decision. For Makhachev, that looks like control time, and obviously for Ian Garry, that looks like takedown defense. Because when this fight is on the feet, Ian Garry's going to do better than Makhachev, and I just think that's like fairly accurate because Makhachev won't be in range where Garry will be in range. Garry's footwork is something that, Makhachev only really saw in Volkanovski, and that gave Makhachev tons of issues. On top of that, Volkanovski's shorter, Garry's much taller, longer, has the advantages on Makhachev in that department. So on the feet, I think we saw someone with sick movement, which was Volkanovski, give Makhachev trouble, and now we have someone with equal movement to that, and just a lot of physical traits that help him in that aspect as well. So I think that is the real key to victory here. The submission is live for Makhachev. We're not going to ignore that, so that's obviously going to be there. But that being said, when it comes to my final prediction on this fight, I'm gonna slightly lean Islam Makhachev by decision, just because I think that at the end of the day, what do I trust more over 25 minutes? And I think that Makhachev has just shown that he's always going to throw that control time in there. And I think he's going to have to brute force wrestling. I don't think it's going to look as pretty as it looked in that JDM fight, for example. I think that, some of this is going to be like a little bit of like, not desperation, but it's going to look like that. So he's going to have to brute force this wrestling to Ian Garry. And while I think Ian Garry actually can defend these takedowns, can he do it for 25 minutes without making a mistake? That's going to be the tough part for Ian Garry, because I think once Makhachev starts going downhill, building confidence that he can get Machado Garry down and control him, it's going to be really hard for Garry to, turn that around in the fight. So I think that while Garry actually has the tools, the striking, and I think he even has potentially the defensive grappling to stop an Islam Makhachev. And when I say stop, I don't mean finish, but I just mean like, stop this run he's on and actually beat him, get the belt off of him. I think Garry has all the tools. I'm going to have to slightly lean Makhachev because Makhachev can still make some mistakes in this fight. Mistakes for Makhachev won't be deadly. Of course, you don't want to make mistakes in a fight, but mistakes for Makhachev won't be deadly. A mistake for Ian Garry in this fight will be deadly. So when it comes to that, I think Makhachev has a little bit more room for error, which is why I'm going to lean his way. And I think he wins this by decision. That being said, when it comes to the betting side now, the odds are, I think, a little bit too skewed on the Makhachev side. I really think Garry has the tools to win. So I think as like a value side, Ian Garry is probably the better bet. I wouldn't love laying the chalk at whatever minus 390 or whatever the fuck it is on your sports book for Islam Makhachev money line. Like I said, I will still lean Makhachev to win, but I think the value is probably on Ian Garry here. And when it comes to the best bet on this card, it's going to be the round over 4.5. I really think that while the only finish live here is a Makhachev submission, and while it is live, I think Ian Garry is actually just a really high IQ fighter. He's going to play, to survive, even if he gets in a tricky spot. So I don't see Ian Machado Garry taking a lot of risks. And at the same time, if this fight plays out the way I see it playing out, I actually don't see Islam Makhachev taking a lot of risk either, because if these rounds are close and Makhachev has an ability to get some control time, he has a good position, will he risk that position to get back up on the feet if he's struggling to take Garry down consistently? Who knows? So I think this fight plays out pretty close, and I don't see either fighter taking an insane risk just because they're so elite at what they do that if you give someone an inch, they might take a mile in this fight. So I don't see the submission really being that prominent. I think it is live. We're going to have to acknowledge it. But when it comes to the best bet here, it's the over 4.5. That's the one I'm laying up. And yeah, I'm going to lean Islam Makhachev. I think the betting line is skewed here, though. And like I said, Ian Machado Garry really does have the tools. But overall, let me know what you guys think about this fight in the comments. Am I tripping? Is this an easy Islam Makhachev win? Should I, trust my gut? I wouldn't say my gut, but should I lean more on the Ian Garry side? Like, do I have the right breakdown, but I'm not just trusting the underdog in this process? Let me know what you guys think. Drop it in the comments. And yeah, I will see you guys after UFC 330.